Now, if you can hear us, please let us know. Let us know where you're listening to us from. If you're watching a recording, welcome to Noble Warrior. My name is CK Lin. Noble Warriors, where I interview entrepreneurs about their journey from the first mountain of success and achievement to the second mountain of impact and fulfillment. So you can go and navigate your own journey from the first mountain to the second mountain. If you have any friends who could use more inspiration and permission to take that leap of faith, go ahead and share this episode with them. They really thank you for it. My next guest, I'm so excited, is the powerful Shelley Paxton. She's the former CMO of Harley Davidson. She's the author of the best-selling book, Soulbbatical, A Corporate Rebel's Guide to Find Your Best Life, which is on Forbes 21 books to read in 2021. She has been featured on NBC, CBS, Thrive Global, Forbes, Inc., Business Insider, and PBS. She's a fellow podcaster at Rebel Souls. If you want to find out more about her, she has a Rebels Manifesto. I made a link. If you go to bit.ly/Rebel Souls, REBELSOULS, you'll all in lower cases, you'll find her manifesto. Please welcome Shelley Paxton.
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, CK.
So I want to first off by start reading this passage from your book. Soulbbatical is about allowing our souls to guide us without our personalities, identities, or preconceived notions getting in the way. It's accepting that our souls are shepherding us towards the experiences we need to have and surrendering to the flow instead of hammering our way through. So on this podcast, Shelley, we talk a lot about the metaphor of first mountain of success to the second mountain of purpose and impact. Personally, I read your book. I listened to many podcasts you've been on already. I love that you didn't pretend to be this enlightened Buddha who just transcended and ascended from the mountaintop. You're a regular person who struggles with problems that we all struggle with. When we're going into some of the tactical things that you really help people make that transition easier. You are very honest about the suffering that you had during that dark night of the soul. You're also very sincere and earnest that you're still on this journey versus you have already arrived. It's so important from my perspective that we normalize these conversations, especially about transformation before, during, and after. So from one noble warrior to another, I really salute you for your courage, sincerity, and earnestness.
That's a beautiful reflection. I received that. Thank you. And thank you for diving into the book. I feel really drawn to your work. I mean, this concept of the first mountain, which I experienced, the success and achievement mountain, to this impact and fulfillment mountain, is where our work is so aligned and our journeys are so powerfully and beautifully aligned. So yeah, I'd love to dig in. It was fun hearing you reflect that passage back to me.
So there are many juicy topics I like to dive into. So I just list them just sort of for people who are watching, kind of know a little bit of where we're going. We're going to talk about corporate Shelley to soulful Shelley. We're going to talk about how you plan to liberate 1 billion souls. We're going to talk about the concept of soul empty to soul full. And also specifically, I'm also curious about how you transmute your negative emotions and thoughts into this new identity and superpower. We're going to talk about changing the definition of ROI from return on investment to ripples of impact. And also how you can take everything that you learn from Harley Davidson, an iconic brand, to liberating 1 billion souls. So these are all topics, given the time that we have, I want to dive into, okay?
Yeah, so that is juicy.
So first question is this. So after you found your path, you said in another interview that the happy accident was that everything starts to open up when I fully believe that I'm living into this new identity. Now, if we're a fly on a wall watching your life as a movie, what else will we see or experience?
In this moment, or in the moment of that transition, or all of it?
The second mountain. You're climbing your second mountain right now.
Yeah.
Now you found your Dharma. Everything's opening up. you're now falling into this new identity. What else will we see on this movie, in this movie?
Oh, man. So I'm going to start with what you alluded to when you read that first passage, the notion of trust and surrender. One of the most influential books on my journey, and it continues to influence me today, is Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment. And to me, it is one of the most important concepts that I have to learn and practice again and again and again on this second mountain. I don't know how, right? I say, I have this declaration, I have this intention to liberate 1 billion souls. I don't know exactly how that's going to happen. I know I'm not going to do it on my own. I know that's part of my impact in the world. I know if I keep showing up in my authenticity, in my courage, and in my purpose every day as a lighthouse, I'll be guided. And so as much as I want to hold tight, to what does that look like? What should I be creating? Knowing, all the next right steps, I don't, right? I don't know any of that. And I'm in that beautiful mess right now in my business. I declared 6 months ago that I never intended to set out and create a coaching business on this second mountain. It happened. And it happened for a reason, and it's not the way I'm going to get to 1 billion souls. So I continue to be called again and again, not to serve one-on-one, but to serve one to many, to really continue to show up in my podcast, like you said, Rebel Souls, to show up in writing book number 2, to show up and inspire from big stages. I mean, I can go on, but you get the idea. So that trust and surrender, like, I don't know, what's the business model behind that? What does it look like? I've let go of one trapeze swing and the next one isn't there yet. And I'm breathing into that magical moment that the next best step will be presented to me.
So in that moment of letting go of the first, getting before the second, right? It's very exciting. Some people may say it's really scary, but my interpretation of everything that you're doing is, as you trust, as you surrender to flow, you open yourself to tons of new opportunities and this energy that, this aliveness, right, that people feel when you're speaking. That's what that is, right?
And let's be honest. Yeah, that's where the thing that, right, when I feel that what feels like, of course, is there a little bit of fear there? Yeah, there's fear there. And what I do is I thank my body for reminding me that I'm alive. So I love that you just said aliveness, because that's a very literal practice that I have when I'm feeling all the butterflies or that nervous energy or whatever's coming up for me in the moment. I check in with my body and I say, thank you for reminding me that I'm alive. This is what it feels like to be alive and moving forward and to have a big mission in the world. And it's also a reminder that when we're feeling this way, this aliveness, it's where the magic and the synchronicities and all of that yummy stuff happens for us. It doesn't happen when we're in our comfort zone. It doesn't happen when we're playing small in that corner. It only happens when, as you said, we're like on the edge. And that's powerful. At least that's been my personal experience. And so much of what you read in the book and what I wrote about is like, whenever I was at that edge, whenever I was trusting, whenever it did feel scary and I felt alive, that's when the doors and the portal started opening for me, truly.
Beautiful. So we'll put a pin on this current state right now. Okay. So for the people who are inspired by your energy, by what's possible, we'll put a pin on this. We'll draw the path in the moment, bring us back to the moment, because you had said the universe speaks to you from a whisper to a shout to a 2x4. So tell us about the reoccurring nightmare that woke you up from the Matrix. Just give the short version of it.
Yeah. So this one could go on forever. And also I don't want to spoil it, because anybody who wants to read the book, this is where the book starts, right? I literally grab you by the lapels and bring you into my world. And I call it's really interesting, CK, that we're having this conversation in this moment in history right now, because I feel like my kind of wake up moment was 5 years ago at Harley. I feel like the world, and maybe a lot of people who are listening to this right now, are feeling woken up, right? 2020 was the year that shook us. 2021 kind of woke us up to what matters most. And I'm calling 2022 the year of the revolution, right? The year that we're going to rewrite the script of success on our terms. So it's interesting. That's the context to what I'm about to say. What this looked like for me 5 years ago was I'm, chief marketing officer at Harley Davidson. I'm 45 years old. My career has been nothing but this, hockey stick trajectory on that first mountain, as you describe it. And I start getting ripped out of my sleep night after night after night by the same recurring nightmare. And this was absolutely my moment of the universe going, hey, we've been whispering, we've been shouting, and yeah, now we're going to whack you with that 2x4 until you pay attention. Because I was pretending not to know that I was living my dad's dream, and that I was completely disconnected from my own truth. And my truth is my soul. I was disconnected from my own essence. And that's what the nightmare showed up night after night after night to literally like a projector to make me look in its eyes to see that my soul and the proxy for my soul, I'm not going to spoil it, but what I saw brought me to my knees, and I was a puddle of tears every night. I was not sleeping because what I saw, I ultimately realized was a proxy for my soul, and my soul was malnourished, neglected, longing for love and attention, and just literally staring me in the face. And it was a tough wake-up call. And I'll be honest, this nightmare happened for the entire last year that I was at Harley. And it took me 6 months to decode what it was trying to tell me. And part of that happened because I actually went and asked for help. I went to the doctor and I said, I think I'm losing my mind. And by that point, substance abuse was involved because I was drinking too much, trying to incapacitate this nightmare because, again, pretending not to know what's really going on. And, sort of like a kid does, right? Plug my ears and go, like I can't hear you. And yet it keeps breaking through. And so that was truly my, literal moment of getting woke to the truth that I wasn't living my truth. I wasn't living my authenticity. I wasn't being courageous. And that was the very beginning of what I called Soulbbatical, when I finally chose to accept that truth and explore it and have my own, as you said, dark night of the soul, walk into the cave and deal and really fully explore and understand, well, what does this mean? And who am I when you strip away all of that stuff?
So quick question there, because you had a 2x4 moment, right? It was a month, or actually it was a month of
it was a year. Yeah, it was 12
a year
months
of recurring nightmare, right? So that's a very obvious sign, right? So as such, you took drastic actions and so forth. For those people who may not have the very obvious, so I'm kind of a savant in that case, right? I need something that's really obvious. So what are some of the signs you think that I should pay attention to?
Oh, it's such a good question. I mean, here's one, and it kind of weaves into one of the other juicy topics that you mentioned. So I now understand that success is a feeling. And I didn't understand that. What I understand now is that what I had at Harley, this traditional success that society, tells us to want, tells us to work our asses off for, tells us to strive for at all costs. I had ticked all of the boxes of traditional success on that first mountain. And yet I felt empty inside. I felt like I was dying a little bit inside, and I felt really guilty for that because I thought, I've worked my ass off for 26 years. You know, I've made it to the top of the mountain. Most people would kill, at least in the marketing space, to be the CMO of Harley freaking Davidson, right?
I mean, or
Iconic.
any Harley Davidson fans.
Absolutely. Iconic, global, sexy, you know, it's people tattoo it on their bodies, all of the things. How could I be in this place and feel the way that I feel? And I now understand that concept in my language as success empty, because we're playing someone else's game. And we are articulating success and striving for success on someone else's terms. And what I understand now, so I'm kind of bridging the two mountains to answer this question, but what I understand now is that the second mountain is truly successful, as in Full. I feel filled up from the inside out because I'm defining success on my terms and in a way that fuels me from the inside out. So the first thing that I would say is, if you have that, like, I always love to say, the gnawing is knowing.
The what?
If you
Gnawing?
had the gnawing,
Yeah.
that little gnawing feeling inside, it's the knowing. Get curious about what that gnawing is. What is it? What is it trying to tell you? Sit with it, get still around it, because that is most likely your form of empty. And it might come as small little signs. It might come as like I'm just not feeling it. Why am I doing all these things that the world tells me are amazing things to do, and I don't wake up on fire every day? Get curious about that. That's where I would tell you to start.
I love that. In you had also mentioned, I'm quoting you, right? There's a couple other signs that our listeners should pay attention to. Pay attention to the shoulds, the inner voice, when they're shooting
Oh,
all
yeah.
over you. So that's another. The
Can I
third
just
one,
comment on that one before you go to the third one?
sure, of course.
Yeah. So this idea of I call them the shackles of should, right? So get curious about the language, because these things are connected. These ideas, what I said, like that gnawing, that feeling of emptiness, when you start getting really clear and like, wait, where is that coming from? What's going on here? I'm willing to bet that what you're going to find is that it's like, well, I feel that way because, well, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And we're telling ourselves all of these stories because we've signed up for someone else's life plan. We've signed up for someone else's dream. So the shoulds are directly correlated with us feeling empty inside because we're not doing what lights us up. We're not doing what fills us up. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Awesome. So the third thing that you also said in other places is notice your physical energy. So not just the spiritual, emotional emptiness that you talked about, but the actual physical energy drain. If you notice draining of your energy, right, whether it's through the activities or the relationship, right, you call it soul fuel versus soul suck, right? If those things occur, those are also things to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and that's an exercise that I have you do in the book, as you know, and it's a really powerful one. I do it. I've done it with coaching clients in the past. I've done it with groups. I've done it from stages. But literally, I ask everybody who's listening to us right now or to the recording, do this exercise. Gift yourself 10 minutes, 10 minutes, first thing in the morning, maybe before everybody else in your house is awake. And take a blank piece of paper, and on one side of it, do a column that says soul fuels. Those are the things that light you up, that give you energy. And on the other side of it, do soul sucks. Those are the things that, like you said, CK, that drain you. And then stream of consciousness without picking up your pen. Give yourself 5 minutes in each column. And when you pull back, take a look. And ask, like, what surprises you? You know, what scares you? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? That curiosity and that investigation will tell you a lot about where a lot of these success empty things are creeping into your life. And believe me, I know they still creep into mine.
Of course. Now, actually, no, that's a really good point. I want to underline something. You didn't say it in any of the interviews or your book, but I'm curious to know your thoughts. As human beings, our consciousness are always changing, just like the ocean and so forth, right? So what you're saying is not to just point out to the acute sense of emptiness or shoulds or energy drains and so forth. I think what you're pointing to is the persistent over a long period of time, let's say months, weeks or months, perhaps even years. And once you notice that, that's the sort of the indicators that you ought to really pay attention to versus just the day-to-day ups and downs. Is that a projection? Is that correct?
100%, right? We're looking for the trends, right? So, I mean, if I put on my business hat, we're looking for the trend lines, right? You're right. It's gonna go up and down, but what are the trends and where are we, where are our boundaries getting porous? Where are we allowing a lot more of the energy into our lives? Because over time, it's going to destroy our nervous system. It's going to suck our energy. It's going to dominate our agenda so that we wake up one day and go, oh man, I'm 100% serving someone else's agenda and not my own. I'm living someone else's truth and not my own. All of those things are underneath those trend lines. Yeah.
So quick sort of side adventure for a little bit more philosophical question here.
Yeah.
Do you think that people need to climb their first mountain of success before switching their gear to the second mountain? And more specifically, I'll say, maybe someone is say, hey, Shelley, you're former CMO of Harley Davidson. You have won, not you, but maybe someone else listening. Hey, you have an Oscar, you have a Grammy, you have made 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, whatever the thing. You have a PhD. Of course, you have the luxury to talk about meaning and purpose in the second mountain. What about us mortals who haven't arrived, quote unquote, our first mountain of success? How would you answer or respond to that question?
Oh, this is so good. I mean, let me tell you how I think about it as it relates to my life and my story,
Of
because it's
course.
the only one that I know
Of
intimately,
course.
right?
Of course.
There are days where I kind of chuckle. So I'm 51 and I love that I'm 51. I love that, it took me as long as it took me to get here. And I'll be honest, there are days where I'm coached by somebody who's 35. I am surrounded by people who have figured this out earlier on the journey than I did. And there's some days where I was like, damn, I wish that maybe I would have climbed the first mountain a little faster, or I would have I would have listened to these to the voices, or paid attention to the feeling, gotten curious about the things that, before the 2x4 had to whack me. And honestly, when I wrote the book, as you know, I started to realize I got a lot of signs over the years, and I chose to continue to ignore them all. So I own all of that. And even though I sometimes have those moments where I was like, how cool would it have been if I figured this out before I was 40? I'm so clear that my journey was my journey for a reason. And I'm
Yeah.
so clear that, even though my dad was like, you should be president of Harley Davidson, you need to run a company, you need to do the thing. I'm really glad I stopped short of maybe that. I mean, maybe that's the equivalent of summiting Mount Everest, and I wasn't willing to go there. I stopped at the last base camp and said, this is enough for me, because I now understand what it's doing to me. And I now understand that I am craving fulfillment, that I am craving feeling this aliveness that I don't feel in doing what I'm doing right now. And so, yeah, I guess my answer is, I think to some degree, whether you get to base camp 1, 2, 3, 4, or you summit Everest, I think spending some time on the success and achievement mountain is going to help us learn about who we really are.
Mm, mm, mm. Let me actually just quote real quick again, a quick side conversation. I was speaking to the cornerman of like Lance Armstrong, Tiger Woods, Jeff Spencer. I don't know if you know who that is. He gave a really beautiful sort of meta coaching advice, because I was asking, hey, what's it like to, work with these super elite high performers? And specifically, I was asking him, how do you tell them what's to come without pouring rain on their sunshine, right? And he said, you just tell them, like, hey, you're free to do whatever you want to do, but let me tell you, in a week, a month, a year, whatever, you're going to hit this very challenge. And what you do with it is up to you. But I'm just letting you know, if you go down this path, this is what you'll hit. So going to the, for people who want to climb their first mountain of success, by all means do that. But there are consequences and costs if you're not following your personal trajectory, your personal guidance.
I love that. And I think it really aligns with how I think about this and talk about this in the work that I do in the world, because I say that we all have the opportunity to rewrite the script of success, and more importantly, rewrite our script of success, right? Because mine is going to be different than yours, different than Jeff's, different than anybody listening to this. Now, there may be some commonalities, but what I love is my work, and I think your work helps people to see this earlier than we did, certainly earlier than I did. And I love to say no regrets, because I don't want to see people beating themselves up for the time they've invested and where they've gone, because there are gifts in that journey. What I do want to see is that maybe you don't have to spend as long on that first mountain as I did. Maybe you can start to understand rewriting that script, like, well, what does that mean for me? So when I think about successful, really one of the first exercises is, what does success look like for me? And that is not an easy question for most people to answer. It took me a long time to figure that out. And so, but if I can get people thinking about that sooner than later, and then that becomes a lens through which they think about, their journey, that feels really good to me. Maybe you will be 35 and going, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And especially, again, I'm going to circle back to this moment in history where you and I are having this conversation. We are unsteadily, trying to emerge from a global pandemic that has shaken everyone's lives up. Everyone's life has changed in at least one way. And almost all of us have gotten really clear on what matters most to us. People are fleeing urban centers. People are demanding flexibility in the way they work. Burnout and the mental health crisis are skyrocketing. Things have to change. And so there's no greater time, in my opinion, to be having this conversation and thinking about what it means to start, hiking that second mountain, because it's ours to create.
Yeah, real quick. Usually we think about quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, all these different, like, very time specific milestones or time bound milestones. The global pandemic, as you said, I think is a beautiful challenge or crisis, right? And in Chinese, as you know, crisis is both danger and opportunity. You have the opportunity now to reevaluate, do I want to stay in this company? Do I want to stay in this geographic location? And then really think about, what is the life I want to design, right? I think the beautiful question that you have in your book was, if I continue to live as I live now for the next 5, 10, 20 years, am I moving towards of who I want to become or further away? So that's beautiful contemplation that you gifted your readers.
That question woke me up, right? Because it gets really scary if you think, wow, like, what am I doing this in service of? And, a lot of people will say, yeah, but if I do it for 5 more years, then I can make this much more money. And then I can have the freedom. But I'll be honest with you, this is one of the ways that I define success empty. if you are saying to yourself, or you catch yourself saying quite frequently, like I did, I'll be happy when, that is playing a very dangerous game. So I'll be happy when, I make the X amount of dollars, or when I get that certain title or that certain promotion. Those are all external factors, right? And asking that profound question really forces you inside to say, wait, what really matters to me? Who am I becoming? Who do I want to become on this journey? And that's your truth. Those are your values. That becomes your scaffolding to create this new life. We create our reality.
Absolutely. And the only person that could do that to discern the chatter of the ego, because the ego can always rationalize anything. Oh, you need this. Of course, you have responsibilities. Yes, your kids depend on you. Your employees. They can always rationalize anything. It requires that that quietude that you talked about to really distill, like, truly, what does my soul yearn for? So beautiful. Let's ask the question further. You had said, I want to liberate 1 billion souls. Could you define liberate and souls? So that way, then you can measure, right? CMO, like this desire, this manifestation of this intention.
Yeah. It's wow, this is the deepest anybody's wanted to dig into this. So I love this. Thank you. So liberate is, to me, it's liberation is a freedom, right? And it tracks back to what I was just saying about rewriting, our own script of success. What we're really doing is liberating ourselves from these shackles of should. We're liberating ourselves from playing the game of life and defining success on someone else's terms. We are liberating ourselves to truly live a life that is more authentic, more courageous, and more purposeful. So that's the liberation piece, right? And those are really important. That says that, I define Soulbbatical as a way of being that's in full alignment with our soul. And you asked me how I define soul. I define soul as our truth, our essence, right? That's what, like, everything, that who we are is not titles and money and houses and cars and boats and all of the things, right? Who we are is at our core. And that's how I think about soul. It's like, wow, if I am really being truthful to myself, I am living in alignment with my soul. So that's how I think about those two pieces. Yeah.
I love it. So here's the suggestion. Here's an idea as you're speaking, right? So what I'm seeing in my mind is, if someone has an awakening moment, a moment of, they call it satori, right? A moment of awakening, moment of lucidity. And they say, all right, here's my declaration of who I am and what I'm going to be. And this resonates with my essence. If you actually on your website have a place to record all of that, then all of a sudden you have a trackable thing. And then you can also look at it, like, based on all the effort that I make in speaking, in courses, in podcasting. These people, many people are now on their path to freedom.
I love that idea. Yes. Well, so it's such a cool idea, because I've never really been able to answer. I mean, yeah, this is kind of funny having my CMO hat on, right? And like, when people say, what does your scorecard look like? And I'm like, right, my head just wants to explode, because that was never my favorite part of the job, if I'm honest, right? So, and let's be right, I'm honest and authentic at my core.
I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You really share everything about your life, in the book. Yeah.
The truth is, and in my business today, the truth is, like, I don't know, I can't tell you how many souls I've liberated, I really can't. You know, we can talk about number of books sold or how many people listen to my podcast or follow me on the socials or whatever, but that's not really it either. And so I have gotten to this place, and maybe this takes us full circle to the trust and surrender conversation earlier on. I am trusting that by showing up every day and continuing to push myself to play bigger, to be in the arena, to be a model. I call it being a soul model for living this soulbbatical life that is more authentic, more courageous, and more purposeful. I am trusting that I am inspiring others and giving others permission to do that themselves. So I don't have a grand scorecard, but your idea is really cool.
Please take it.
Yeah,
all right, so
thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's keep moving forward, right? Because our time is quite limited, and there's so much I want to talk to you about. All right, so, and also, guys, if you're watching this, just so that you know, I'm not asking, our guests for the sake of my own curiosity. I'm actually charting out the meta structure, how you can follow step by step, how you too can discover your own purpose, your own, your GPS, so to speak. So that way you don't have to necessarily wait until the universe whack you with a 2x4 and with the, years of nightmares. Like yeah. We want to save you from your suffering. Yes, there's value in that. And if, alleviate some pain and suffering, some nightmares, we don't want
it's one of my favorite quotes. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. And I wish I could remember who to attribute that to, because it's not me, but I really, truly believe that. So if anything, like, pain's going to happen. That's part of life, right? It's the lightness and the darkness. How long we choose to sit in that versus moving through it is truly our choice. So I hope that some little bits of what we're talking about today can help you move through and minimize your suffering, because I would never want to go back and have that nightmare for a full year again. That was silly.
So you and Christina Lakiani had talked about transitions, because you could have easily say, I'm going to be a nun or a monk and then say goodbye to the material life, right? That's one path. But for most people, householders, right, they wanted to have their life, have their family. How do you do it in such a way that it doesn't blow up, the rest, the other areas in your life? So one example that you gave was a FU fund as a way to do that, right? As a way to unwind in the most responsible way and so forth. What are some of the other examples, or perhaps ways for people to untether from previous responsibilities, relationships, mortgage, marriage, kids, company, geographic location, possessions, financial portfolio? What are some of the ways to kind of ease them into this second mountain versus just like, all right, guys, I'm off to my sabbatical?
Yeah, well, let's be honest. I mean, I'd love to take a step back before I go into any granularity on answering that question. I'd love to take a step back and say, it doesn't mean you have to let go of any of that. So let me say this right now. I think when I first left Harley and I said, I'm becoming chief soul officer of my life, I gave myself this title because I wanted to feel ownership and responsibility to this beautiful soul of mine. And I called this my Soulbbatical because I didn't know how else to tell people what it was that I was doing, because it all sounded crazy. Nobody leaves chief marketing officer of Harley Davidson job to go to nothing, to explore their soul. And so I think at the time, I thought Soulbbatical meant leaving your job and maybe even leaving the corporate world. And what I'm so clear on now, and I wrote in the book as well, but I want everyone to understand this before we go deep, is Soulbbatical is not about leaving your job. It is about finding yourself. And I think that's really important context for this conversation that we're having, because I have had clients, I have people in my community who love being in the corporate world. The question for them might be, have I created a fully integrated and aligned life? am I looking at my one wild and precious life as one wild and precious life versus a work life over here and a personal life over here, and this, set us up for failure thing we call work-life balance, which to me is BS. So I just want to say that how you define the things that you want in your life and the spaces you want to play in is up to you. Soulbbatical doesn't mean you have to take this radical leap off one mountain, hold your breath, and land, hopefully with a parachute on the other mountain. Yeah, right. On a wing and a prayer. It might look like my journey. It might look like your journey. It might look wildly different. I have had clients who said, what Soulbbatical means to me is actually leading and living more authentically, more courageously, and more purposefully. And for some of them, it meant I'm not in the right place. I'm not in the right company. Maybe I want to be in a company that's a B Corp because I feel really passionately about, the company that I'm a part of having a bigger mission on this planet that is aligned with my values and my mission. Maybe it is leaving the corporate world and becoming an entrepreneur like you and I have done. Maybe it's something in between. So that's all context to say this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. So the first part is getting really, really clear on what does success mean to you, and checking in around what are some of those things. Maybe where are you getting tripped up on the shoulds and on other people's definition of success, and start to unpack that first before you make radical decisions. And in some cases, it might be, hey, I want to kind of start doing some other work on the side, just see how this feels. But it can be as, you could have an FU fund like I did, where I was building that fund over time. So I had a little bit of cushion or runway to say, so that's what I did. I took a year. I thought I was taking a year away from the corporate world. Clearly my calling in the world was to leave corporate altogether so that I could do this, and then kind of go back into corporate with my mission to rewrite the script of success.
Can I just underline something that you said?
Yeah.
Right. So what Shelley and I were talking here isn't as, the drastic transition that she made per se. First and foremost is to figure out what is it that you want. And then oftentimes it doesn't come in a flip of a switch. I don't know. And then boom, I know. Now I can go 100%. And same thing also as well as creating space, right? So what I wanted to ask you when I asked that question was, how do you basically create space as you're figuring out this new direction that you want to head towards? So for you, the space that you created was the FB fund, right? The FU fund. And then also the notice of the shoulds, as well as the soul sucking activities or relationships. These are all different ways for you to create more spaciousness in your life, right? So are there other things to help them create spaciousness so that they can navigate, with more internal spaciousness towards the second mountain?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones, I'm just going to repeat one that you said again. I think one of the biggest ones is, how do we get rid of more of these soul sucks, right? I mean, I literally posted on my, my Instagram feed yesterday, like, stop being available for the things that make you feel like shit, period. End of story. Anything in our lives, people, places, activities, media, events, groups, anything that is making you question, it's draining your energy, like we talked about, or making you question your truth, your value, your enoughness in this world, put an end to it. That's a great way right now. We have more control and more agency over this than we often give ourselves credit for. It's hard, but we teach people how to treat us. And the more we're willing to drop those boundaries, to please people, to do things out of a sense of guilt and obligation, the more we are resentful, the more we are burned out and exhausted, and the more we don't have the spaciousness to do what we're talking about right now. That's a big one for me. So really think about it. I mean, I posted it yesterday because I was feeling it. I was like, why did I do those 3 things? Why did I do that? Why am I making myself available for something that was making me feel this big? No, enough already. I needed the reminder, so I wanted to share it with my community. And now I'm paying it forward into your community as well. That's a biggie for me.
Thank you, Shelley, for being here again. So appreciate you saying yes to this opportunity. All right, segue
I
to
love
another
it. Thank
conversation.
you.
All right, so let's go further about owning our truth. Part of your superpower, you have said, is your energy, or somebody else said that your energy is a superpower. You know, your presence, your fierceness is earned by all the effort that you do when no one's looking, to dissolve your shame or whatever negative emotions in order to speak your truth. So that's my observation. What would you say to that?
Oh man. It's taken me a long time to own this one. I don't know if I'm answering this in a way that's helpful. So you'll tell me. Let me just say what's coming up for me in the moment, and then steer me. It took me a long time to really understand and own my superpower. And I think those are two sides to the coin, right? First, understanding that when people would comment on my energy, it's like, oh, I would dismiss it. I would say, oh, that's just who I am. And I wasn't really fully understanding that no, actually, this is a superpower, and not everybody walks into a room and has the presence, has the magnetism, has the the literal energy that I do. People feel me before they see me, and I'm like all of it. And then so that was the understanding it. When enough people, this is the guidance I would give for all of us, really tune in when you hear the same comments over and over again about like, wow, I love your X, or I love the way you do Y, or you're the only one who does this thing or shows up in this way, or when I see you do this, it has such an impact on a room, on your team, on whatever. Listen for those things. When you hear people say that again and again and again, pay attention. This is an indication of what your superpower really is. So that's one. It's like listening and understanding, like, oh, it tends to be the thing that comes so easily to us that we can't even give it credit for being a thing. I was like, what do you mean my energy? I was just born this way. Okay, well, maybe I was. Owning that and then figuring out how to leverage that. So the owning it was the second piece. It's like, oh, I get it now. That is like, so that's a key part of my business. I have to really work hard to now protect this energy. So on either side of this recording or this live stream, I don't have anything, because my energy is that important. Now that I recognize it as my superpower and I want to show up in the way that I'm showing up right now in this conversation, I'm not going to block myself back to back in a day. I am going to do everything I can to really protect this energy so that when I'm on and I'm sharing it and your people are feeling it, because that is my work in the world and that's my superpower. If I came in here after having 5 back-to-back meetings before you and I had this conversation, you wouldn't be getting this me. And that's really important to me. So I think those things are interrelated. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
It does. So so let me repeat what you said, right? So to recognize what you receive from others that you may not even know. And to people, I say is fish doesn't see water because you're just swimming in the water that you're swimming, right? So this is who you are. This is your superpower. One layer deeper would be, one comment I made was, the reason why you're so good at showing up 100%, being raw, being fierce, being truthful, is because it's not, you don't just do it for the camera. You do it everywhere, especially by
Yeah.
yourself in the dark when you're like really going through whatever, some scaras or, you know, negative emotions. Like that's, you do the work in the dark. So when you show up, you
Yeah.
have full presence. It's earned. It's not bought or given. Do you
Yes.
agree with
Okay.
that?
So yeah, I do. I do. And here's what I would add to that, CK. I would say, so yes, because I believe in being the same person in every room and when no one is watching, right? Showing up for myself in the same way I show up for others is really important to me. And it was a lesson that took me a long time to learn. So showing up for myself is, yeah, it's what do I need? I call it, and the reason I was pausing is I was like, do I want to go here? But I'm just going to say it out loud. I call it radical self-commitment. There's a lot of conversation around this idea of self-care. And believe me, I'm a proponent of self-care. I believe in it. We have got to, I say self first isn't selfish. It is really important. And at the same time, radical self-commitment is bigger than that. It's bigger than, spas and bubble baths and meditation. It is really committing to our values, committing to our truth, committing to our courageousness, committing to creating what we want to create. That to me is radical self-fulfillment or radical self-commitment, sorry. And it's what I do. So you're right. Behind the scenes, am I working through all the stuff that's coming up? Absolutely. And I'm taking it a step further because I stand for authenticity and courage and purpose, and this is my work in the world. I then come back and share it.
Yes.
It's a lot of what I do, not only in the book, but in the podcast on an ongoing basis as I continue. There's not a there. You said this in your intro. It's like we are on the journey. And I'm going to continue to play at a higher and higher base camp as I climb this mountain,
Yes.
right? And there's going to be new things to break through and new things to discover about myself and upper limits to bust and all of that stuff. And I'm committed to not only doing the work, but to bring that work from the darkness into the light, because I don't want others to feel alone on their journey. We're all doing this work and we are not alone in it. And that's a big part of why I talk about what I talk about.
I love it. So I have a nuanced question. Want to follow up with that is Brené Brown, one of your heroes, right? One of your, role model, soul model,
Yeah.
right? She had said vulnerability is earned. So it's a little bit paradoxical at the surface. How do you discern what to share and what not to share, to whom to share and to whom not to share? Because you're such an open and honest person, right? So how do you navigate that? You know what I'm talking about? Can you give it back to me what you understand? So this is a juicy one. So
yeah, it is. And me kind of like looking out into space was like, wow, I don't think I've thought about this one. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes up. I mean, what I hear you asking me to play it back to you is, how and when do I discern that, somebody has earned the trust, has created the safe space for me to be vulnerable. Is that fair?
yeah, to share your truth, right? Your most vulnerable, your juiciest, like the essence of you. So how do you navigate that space? Your commitment is to show up as you are, the truth of who you are, without, worrying about how others feel.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Brené Brown, right? Vulnerability is earned. How do you navigate that space? I have my thoughts, but I'm curious to know what yours is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like in the moment, I mean, listen, the first thing that's coming to me is, well, I put my heart and soul on paper for this book that is out in the world. Not everybody who reads this book has earned my trust, has created a safe space for me to share what I share in the book. And as you know, it's very raw. And it's very raw for a reason, because I want people to know that, it's very easy for us to put, whether you're chief marketing officer of Harley Davidson or whatever you are, it's easy for us to put people like that on a pedestal. And it looks shiny on the outside and it looks sexy on the outside and all of it. I want everybody to know what's going on beneath the surface, and that even when things on Instagram or wherever they are look polished, there is, the messiness of being human underneath that. So I'll be honest with you, I think I've taken a leap that says, I'm putting it out there. I have made a commitment to being true to myself. So you invite me into this space. I don't know who all's listening. I trust you because you and I have had a dialogue, and I think there's a beautiful intersection in our work. And I love where you're taking this conversation, and I'm willing to go there. How others receive it, I'm not responsible for. And it may land with some, it may not land with others. Here's what I know for sure. And this is something else Brené says. I am not willing to get in a conversation with people who are hurling rotten tomatoes from the cheap seats and refusing to be in the arena with people like you and I. If you're willing to get in the arena with me and say, wow, Shelley, you wrote this, this thing in your book, like some of the examples that you're bringing up, and I want to share with you my story, which so many people have done so beautifully. They've said, you really gave me language. You inspired me to want to dig deeper, to want to think about what this means in the context of my life and my journey. And they share these raw, beautiful stories back with me. Those are my people. I will stay in the arena all day long with you and continue to peel the layers away. If you want to write me a nasty review and say you hate the sound of my voice, or I'm a white privileged, biatch, or whatever you want to call me, which, by the way, I admit to all of that, then I'm not playing with you. I'm not playing with you. So I think, I don't know. I mean, in the moment, those are the things that are coming up for me. It's almost like I assume positive intent. I assume that the people who are finding my work are going to step into the arena with me. And so I'm willing to go there. I'm giving you that chance. And if you then just start, hurling insults from your seat and you're not willing to get in there with me, I got no time for it. We're not going to have a dialogue. That's kind of how I think about it. I'm curious, I'm curious what your answer to that question would be. And does anything I said resonate with you?
Oh, for sure. 100%. So I love that mindset. You offer trust. And also second, those that want to dance with you would dance, right? I think it was the Dr. Seuss. He said, those that matters don't care. Those that care don't matter, so to speak, right? So I love those two frames. What I also see is, in stepping into prominence as a leader, as a thought leader, as anything, if you want to stand out, to make your mark from your soul, there's a journey of exercising a muscle. So if you just say, I am a da-da-da-da-da, then share everything from your closet in an irresponsible way, that's throwing up. That's not vulnerability, right? But it's in the exercising and the discernment of your intent to share, educate, inform the younger Shelleys and the CKs. You've done that over and over again. Second City, right? CMO, you're very public. You do it from a data. So you build up the muscles to do it in such a way in service of those that read your book. So I think it's also a process as well.
Yeah, it is. And I love that you said that. I think it is. I assume positive intent. I assume that there's a trust. I assume that you're finding and connecting with my work because you want to go there in some way, shape, or form, or just take that little baby step. I always say every badass accomplishment is a series of tiny steps. And if you come into my world and into my work with a willingness and a mindset to say, I'm ready to take, I don't know what it looks like. I need help. I want inspiration. And I'm ready to take whatever that next right tiny step is, we can dance. We can dance.
Perfect. Okay, great. So segue, again, I can talk to you for hours, but I'm watching the time. Clock is ticking. All right. We may not get to the business aspect of it, but sort of the soul of business part, but this is juicy. Okay. So segue to that. We're the average of the 5 people we surround ourselves with, right? Especially when we're in that liminal space. After the caterpillar, before the butterfly, right? We don't
in the ooey gooey mess.
Exactly, right? It's the community is so important. You chose to be a part of Rich Lipkin's community, like it was your core community. Like, why? Can you share with us sort of your criteria of choosing your community, your people?
Yeah. Community is still top 3 for me. I mean, I've got to have it. And at the time when I stepped into Rich Litvin's community, so not only Rich is a very well-known coach, British guy who's based on the West Coast in Santa Monica, California. And he, as part of his broader community, he has an invitation only, very high level kind of, leaders and coaches and entrepreneurs who are changing the world kind of group called 4PC. And I was part of 4PC for almost 3 years. And the reason that I chose that, there are many flavors of this. Rich and his work happened to really resonate with me. So one, does the community and who's in the community resonate with you? Do you feel it? Do they feel like your people? And 2, Rich says this best. He reminds us every day, if we're the smartest person in the room, we're in the wrong room. And I realized that as I was in this liminal space and I was transitioning from having this badass professional network, a Rolodex that I built over 26 years in the corporate world, that I didn't really have anybody who would support and challenge and inspire me as I was creating this next chapter. And I didn't even know what that looked like. So I knew I needed to be in a space with people who were many steps ahead of me, who would scare the bejesus out of me, who would pull the best out of me.
And why would they scare you, by the way? Why would they scare you? You are Shelley Paxton, former CMO of Harley Davidson. Why would they scare you? I don't understand.
Because so Shelley Paxton, former CMO, and this is one of the things I realized, and I know we'll talk a little bit about like my transition from corporate Shelley to soulful Shelley. I realized that I was always this really good, like I was a steward of these incredible iconic brands. I stood behind brands and made them more important than myself. And the question I finally asked myself was like, what if the Shelley Paxton brand is the most iconic brand you could ever steward and that you could ever support in the world? And so when I started thinking in terms of that and I watched what other people were doing, the scary part to me is that meant I was front and center. Not Harley, not Visa, not AOL, not McDonald's, not all these incredible brands that I'd worked on throughout my career. I was front and center. I was fully exposed. And so we say we're ready for these things, but that was a hard one. I am so much, even though I've been on stages and I did Second City and all of that, when you are putting your heart and soul out into the public in the way that I do,
the most core of who you are.
Yeah, totally. It's scary. So I also wanted people there to celebrate with me, to challenge me, to inspire me. I wanted to see how they were doing it. I wanted to see what it looked like. I wanted to be held while I was doing it. And so that was really what that community was all about. And I stayed in for a number of years. I only left in January of this year. And now I'm in another community led by Abby Gibb. It's called Divine Feminine Leadership Academy. And it's really for badass women who are movement makers in the world. So interesting, right? Like I'm on another base camp on the second mountain now. And so this community of movement makers, which I am one, is now inspiring me and pushing me and challenging me and holding me. And I just don't think that there's anything more important to any of us, whatever your journey looks like. Be with people who inspire you, support you, challenge you, hold you, ask you, what support do you need in this moment? And maybe some days they're simply there to just listen and sit with you.
I think this is a little digression to what this is. I think given the time and also the trend of the world, where the world is going, the role of a space holder is becoming increasingly more important. Unfortunately, for space holder, it provides space. So you can't really point to what content or things they create, right? A space holder is that you are in full acceptance and love and envelop. You can say whatever you want and you're still fine and good. So anyways, there's a little side comment I want to make, being in a container, in a community where such space is provided is very, very precious, especially more and more people are feeling isolated and depressed or whatever the thing is and not being understood. So the role of a space holder is becoming more important.
Yeah, I love that you paused on that, because it's so important, and it's really important in how we support each other. I've become a big advocate for mental health. It's part of my story and my journey. As you know, a portion of the proceeds of my book go to supporting an organization called Life is Priceless, which supports mental health research and suicide prevention and all the things that are really important to me. And so I'm tying that to being a space holder, because you're right. In this world where busyness is a badge of honor, in this world where I'm trying to, be right instead of, get it right, in the world where I'm speeding up instead of slowing down and sinking in and listening deeply, man, space holders are, I think it's one of the most valuable roles we can play, and one of the most valuable gifts we can receive. And I want to see more of that in the world, to slow us down and get us out of this busyness and be that for each other. That to me is a big piece of, what success looks like on this second mountain. Right? It's slowing down, it's holding space, it's supporting one another. It's not a lone journey. When, at the beginning of the book, I have an intro and I'm kind of like, here's what this book is. Here's how I think about Soulbbatical. Here's the mission I'm on. Here's, it may be for you, it may not be for you. And I say, I wrote the book that I wish would have been out there when I left Harley. I wrote the book that's me putting my arm around you, saying, I got you. And to me, that's a space holder. I am holding space for you as you're reading this book and going on your own journey. And I'm there for you. And I want to see more of us doing that for each other in this world. Kindness and compassion and empathy are really underrated.
I love that. Precisely what our podcasts are here to do, right? Creating that container for the auditory experience that, hey, this type of conversations is appreciated, right? Is worthy of listen to and contemplate on, right? So next question is this. Man, talk to you for hours. Keep saying that. So
maybe we'll do a part 2. We could do a part 2.
Awesome. Great. Awesome. So, so with your new identity, this new belief that Shelley Paxton could be the most iconic brand I've ever represent, how do you reinforce that belief even when there's no evidence yet? So you had talked about, right, immerse yourself in a community where they believe in you, right? They support you, they provide space. Are there other things that you do or are doing to reinforce this new belief, this new identity when there's no evidence yet?
Yeah. And let's be honest, there's growing evidence day by day.
Of
You know,
course.
can I tell you exactly how many souls I've liberated?
Sure.
No. And I probably never will be able to, and I've gotten really comfortable with that. But there's growing evidence. So I guess two things come to mind. I'll say them out loud so you can help me remember in case I get off track. One is I do these I am statements. So I've created what I call an I am manifesto. You might remember that I wrote about this in the book. Like, who am I when you strip away all of the external stuff that's, you know, society says is important? Who am I at my core, at my essence, in my soul? And that's a cornerstone for me. I ground myself in that day after day after day. It is a practice and a habit because it reminds me of who I am, and that informs how I show up. So that's a biggie for me. Is I have clients do this. I've had clients in rooms full of people do this I am manifesto. Who am I really? When you strip away all that other stuff that people tell you is important, who are you? I mean, mine's like, I'm bold. I'm a badass. I'm a trailblazer. I'm a movement maker, you know. I can go on, but those
I
are
love
just
that you can just
I'm a
like rattle it
yeah,
off.
I'm
I
like,
love it.
I say I'm a top 100 podcast host. I say shit that I'm not today because I
Mm.
want to manifest it, right? I'm doing that right now in my dating life. I've just put myself back out there, which is also a super weird thing when you're a really public figure and everybody can like read your book and learn everything about you. That's weird. But but yeah, so I put that out there. So that's a really important piece. And then oh, I knew I was going to forget it if I didn't say it out loud. The I am statements, it'll come to me. Oh, I can't think of it right now. I just lost it. It'll come back as we're having our conversation.
It's all good. It's all good. Well, we had allocated our time for 75 minutes. It's coming up very soon.
We're
So
almost there.
almost there. And I'm like trying to see where we can navigate this. So
Well, you can feel free to ask me one more question. If you've got another, we can, and then we can wrap up. Or are there actually questions? Is there anybody who's on with us and has any questions? I'm happy to take.
Well, I do have a question to sort of wrap up because you had, okay, you have embraced your new identity. Hey, this is possible for me. And now you also have crystallized this vision of liberating 1 billion souls, right? So it is a process as I'm kind of envisioning it, right? How did you come up with that vision, that crystal vision? And then how did you get so bold and say 1 billion souls? Like the Buddha and then Jesus Christ didn't do that. Like that's bold. I love the chutzpah, right? Just,
well, it is. It's pure chutzpah. I mean, let's be really honest about
it.
It's you know, I don't know if it's achievable in my lifetime, and I don't care because a friend of mine, I mean, honestly, okay, so this ties to the importance of community. So as I was in this beautiful community called 4PC, the one we were just talking about, a friend of mine who I mentioned in the book, David Taylor Klaus, who's a brilliant coach, he was hearing me talk about all of this coming up, right? A lot of this was simply me leaning into what is the universe telling me? What are these signs? What keeps coming up when I sit still, and getting into a meditation practice and really paying attention to what was happening in my life, especially not only my nightmare, but anybody who reads the book, you'll read that my dad was a hugely influential figure in this journey as well, because 10 months into my Soulbbatical, my dad had 2 massive strokes that he is still never fully recovered from, but thankfully is still with us. And as I was putting all these pieces together, where it was becoming so clear to me that I was never meant to go back to the other mountain, that I was clearly starting to ascend a new mountain. And I was like, literally, these messages started to come to me. I don't know if I was channeling them. I can't tell you. It's like I would just wake up and I'd be like, yeah, I'm on a mission. And all I knew at the time was that I had liberated my own soul on this journey, and I was being called to liberate other souls. And that was I was starting to realize through this writing workshop that I went to and reflections that I was getting back from others, that this is my work. This is my platform, that it's ultimately a business and it's a book. And Shelley, you are here in, with this soul in this body on this earth right now to liberate souls. And then I got challenged in this beautiful 4PC container. David Taylor Klaus said, I have decided that I now only work with impact billionaires. And I was like, what does that mean? Who's an impact billionaire? And he said, I don't care how much money somebody makes. When I think about my clients, I think about the people who are changing lives in our world and our culture for generations to come. And you're one of those people, Shelley. So talk about the power of sitting in a really
powerful listening.
Yeah, and sitting in a container like that where somebody looks at you and says, I see you. And you, Shelley Paxton, are an impact billionaire. This phrase I had never heard of before, but what he was putting together is me saying, I now understand I'm on this planet to liberate souls. And he's saying you're an impact billionaire. And I remember digesting that for a second. And I remember just slowly looking around this circle. And I said, yeah, my mission is to liberate 1 billion souls. I'm an impact billionaire. And from that moment forward, I will tell you this, and I want to say this out loud for anybody else who hears this kind of BS from other people. Everyone is going to have an opinion on what you say and the goals that you put out in the world. My advice, do not listen to them unless they are part of your trusted soul circle and your posse. I started to tell people that I was on a mission to liberate 1 billion souls and that I was going to write it in the intro to my book. And I would say 7 out of 10 people said to me, that's not really believable, Shelley. And I started to believe them. I was like, oh, they're right. I'm going to sound foolish. This is silly. Like, could I ever really? And then I went, no, we're not going there. Don't know how it's going to happen. Super clear it's not me on my own. That we're going to, that like we taught, like I know you wanted to talk about like ripples of impact is how I'm now defining ROI. And the more of us who are choosing to show up in this Soulbbatical way of being and living our lives more authentically, courageously, and purposefully, we are going to collectively liberate our own souls and pay it forward and liberate other souls. So is it possible? Absolutely. Might it take generations way past my lifetime? Absolutely. I'm living my legacy and I want it to carry on. And so I didn't let other people tell me it was foolish. And the number of times it gets replayed back to me now just makes me smile. And I own the fact, like I did, I don't have the scorecard. I don't know exactly what it looks like. All I know is that it makes me get out of bed on fire every day to do this work. And maybe that's the only reason I stated it out loud.
Thank you for that beautiful encapsulation of it. You're right. Like our vision's number one job ultimately is to inspire us.
Yeah.
And if it inspires others, fantastic, great, right? It helps with the movement, right? Other people feeling the same way and raising their hand at the same time. But the core of it is inspire us.
Yeah.
Last question.
Don't let people tell you it's silly. Please don't let people like pour water on your fire. Please don't. And if you like use mine as an example, like I could be sitting here saying, CK, I'm on a mission to liberate 100,000 souls, and I'd probably be dying a little bit inside.
1 billion is a beautiful number. Now,
Yeah.
last question. If I don't ask
Yeah.
this question, people are gonna be mad at me because I'm talking to the former CMO of Harley Davidson. And Harley Davidson, for me, is the only company that I know of where people are so passionate about their product, the community, where they tattoo their
Yeah.
logos on their body, right?
Yeah.
So, as with your experience as a former CMO, can you unpack the passion of Harley Davidson in perhaps a short amount of time that we have? And how do you take that, all those sort of the atomic principles, to this new movement you're creating, liberating of 1 billion souls and much more?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer, we could probably talk about this for an hour, right? If we truly wanted to unpack it. I mean, the abbreviated version is, the power of Harley has never been about the product itself. It's been about an emotion and a lifestyle and a community of people who from all walks of life are brought together around something that just lights them up and brings freedom into their life. Getting on a Harley is freedom. It's the wind in your hair. It's the, breaking free of the cage, which is the car. It is getting out into nature. It is doing things your own way on your own terms. It's fascinating. There are a lot of parallels between Harley and what I've created. And there's a reason I stayed at Harley for 6.5 years, because I truly believed in what we were selling, because what we were selling was inside. So it goes back to this is like pulls the thread through so much of what you and I have just talked about, right? It's a beautiful way to end, because it really is about that fulfillment. Being on a Harley and being part of that community was really what gave people life. It is why people are so proud to be associated with that brand, because you find your people. You get away from those things that are trying to shackle you and put you in a straitjacket, and you're just like, not going to do it. I'm flipping the bird to doing it someone else's way. And that's what getting on a Harley in particular has always done. It's the emotion and the lifestyle and the freedom and everything that it brings to your life. I mean, more than anything, you're paying for a mindset and a community. You're finding your people when you jump on a Harley, because Harley really isn't yes, it can be a solo sport, but you and I both know when you find Harleys, you tend to find packs of Harleys and communities and rallies and events. And, it's a beautiful thing. And it was the tightest knit, most loyal, most democratic, most non-judgmental community I've ever been a part of. So there were a lot of learnings there for me as I think about, wow, what is that beautiful emotional space that I want to create for people as they are finding their own freedom in their own lives, as they are breaking out of these shackles of should and rewriting their own script of success. How can Soulbbatical be a beautiful community that holds space? So I think that's the short answer of the power of Harley and how I'm translating some of it into what I'm doing. And funny that you should be asking right now, because I'm launching my own community next month in October called Soul Circle, because I want to bring more of this. So all of us who are committed to being on this journey, I want us to be able to hold the space for each other and be in the mess of it and inspire each other and give people more access to me as we're choosing to live, more authentically, courageously, and purposefully. So yeah, some of that I learned from Harley.
I love it. What a beautiful way to end this. So guys, buy the book, Soulbbatical, A Corporate Rebel's Guide to Finding Your Best Life. It's on Amazon and all the other bookstores.
Yep.
And if you want to get the Rebels Manifesto, go to bit.ly/REBELSOULS. Shelley, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. Just being that beacon of light, right? That lighthouse. You show others what's possible. And just really step into this lifestyle of being an impact billionaire. And I really appreciate how you write the book share publicly and share on this podcast specifically, with openness and willingness to dance in these, my style of conversation, and just going really deep about what does it actually take to create, to surrender to our purpose, and to really, embrace each other into this new community to be impact billionaires. So thank you so much for being here on Noble Warrior. And I hope,
oh my gosh,
I hope that we can schedule a second one so we can talk about soul of business, because we talked today a lot about soul of individuals, and that's great. How to awaken individuals. A juicier one. I'm a former chief culture officer in a startup, and so we can really geek out about how do we bring back, humanity and soul into business. So thank you so much for being here.
And that's really what the Rebel Leaders Manifesto. Thank you for linking to that. That's really what that's about. So that'll be a good primer for anybody who wants to download that and read it. And I think that's going to be the bridge into my second book. So it actually makes sense that it might be a second conversation, because I'm just sort of I'm starting to put more meat on those bones, so to speak. So that's exciting.
Awesome. Let's end.